You mentioned water, and I'm really fascinated by this conversation. Another thing that I'm starting to think about, I think a lot of the time we think about water in terms of what we drink, and hopefully people are filtering the waters, and I'd love to get your take on that. Some good options for maybe these whole house systems or entry level, countertop systems, but also then we bathe in it and shower in it and all of that stuff. So what's the story with water? How do you try and clean that up as much as possible?
Yeah, clean water is one of the big four. I always say clean water, clean air, clean food, and clean thoughts are the foundation for good health. But what we put in our body as far as the water we drink is so important. And that's some place that I wouldn't skimp. I would invest in good water filtration. And the thing is you can take a lot of the water filters with you. Like if you live in an apartment or a townhome or you're renting, you can buy a nice water filtration system, pay a plumber $200 to install it. And then when you move, just pay him to come and move it to the next place. And you can take that stuff with you. But really, it comes down to testing the water where you're at and seeing what it is you have in your water that you need to get rid of. But I can tell you that 95%, 98% of the tap water out there is not fit to drink. It needs to have some sort of a filtration device on it. And so for our home, it runs in and we have minerals. So it runs through a water softener and pulls out the minerals and makes it soft water. And then we run it through a whole home carbon filter, which pulls out a lot of the other toxic chemicals and things that could be potentially in the water. And then it runs through and then from there it goes to the rest of the house. But when it goes into the kitchen area, it goes through an RO system. And then we inject hydrogen into it for drinking and cooking. And then for the stuff we actually drink, we run it through a structuring device that spins it out and structures the water. I know that might be a little much, but I think the water we put in our body is so important. It's very important. So go the extra mile and don't skimp on water.
Well, I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me, man. What's that fact we always throw out that, with 70% water or something like that, and the water that we drink is absolutely going to dictate our health. I think you're at the black belt level of water systems there, and we can talk about more of the entry level stuff in a second. But let's say somebody wanted to do that and they had the means available. What's something like that gonna cost or to set up? Like, how invasive is that procedure? Ultimately, it's like you said, it's a really good investment, but what are we thinking here?
$15,000 to $20,000 and then a couple hundred a year to replace your filters. So a significant investment up front, but then once you got it in, you just need to replace the filters.
Mm-hmm. So if you're in your forever home and you have the means, like go the black belt, structure the water, the hydrogen, that sounds amazing. What about like coming back to somebody that's just becoming aware of this? They've been drinking the tap water and you probably know better than I, but there's some nasty stuff in there. Could refresh my mind on what might be in the municipal water supply in terms of like some of the chemicals, tablets and things like that.
Yeah, if you're in an area that's reclaiming the water, like maybe in LA or something, you could have the pharmaceuticals in there because they're not filtering out a lot of those. So you're drinking your neighbor's Prozac or the hormones that are in, you're drinking all that. Microplastics is another big one. That's kind of hot topic right now where they're finding microplastics in like 99% of the water supply and in humans, it's kind of everywhere. But also the forever chemicals, the PFOAs, they're finding that now in a lot of our water supply. That's not to mention if we don't have the lead and the arsenic and these other toxic chemicals and minerals that are coming from the ground. And then of course, fluoride, fluoride's added into a lot of the water supply. So, I mean, just those things right there are in the majority of the water supply that people are drinking and bathing in.
Wow. Yeah, the microplastics one is fascinating too. I just kind of deep dived that personally for some research and, came across some pretty shocking stuff. There was one study that stood out to me. I think it was a small group sample, but it was like 15 men. Microplastics in 100% of their ejaculate. Their sperm had microplastics in it. There was a study where it crossed the blood-brain barrier. There was microplastics in pregnant women's placentas, breast milk. Like, holy moly, like what are we doing? So it gets crazy. So you absolutely have to filter because if you don't use a filter, you become the filter. So the entry-level stuff, in my house right now, before we can invest in something a little more legit, I'm using a countertop Berkey filter. I actually went for some different filters than Berkey's own ones, but they're like a charcoal-based filter, and there's a fluoride attachment on them too. Is that good, or do I need to do some work?
No, it's much better than tap water. Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, you meet someone where they're at and you just make improvements, little baby steps. You don't need to go black belt right off the bat. Unless you want to, always can, but start where you can, even if it's a little tabletop picture, one of those Britas for $30 you get at Costco or at Walmart, get one of those and run your water through it. That's going to be better than nothing. And they have shower head adjustments too, because a lot of times people focus on what we're drinking and cooking in, but they're forgetting about when we're taking a shower and it's nice, hot, steamy, and we're
Mm,
breathing in all this stuff from the water, and our skin porous, and so these are the pores. They can absorb the chemicals that's coming through from the water. So a bath or a shower can sometimes absorb just as much as drinking the water throughout the day. So we want to make sure that that is filtered as well.
yeah, like that. I'm glad you mentioned that one. I think it's easy for people to just think about the drinking and not what they're bathing in and showering in.